Your top stories this evening, sponsored by Courts, bringing value home. GDF troops attacked during patrol near Venezuelan border. GDF assures Guyanese that border remains safe amid planned elections for the Essequibo region. Burbies magistrates uncouth outbursts in full court, now a norm. Burbies Bar writes the acting chancellor. And JAGDEO seeks to defend shared governance. HGP Nightly News begins now. Good evening to our viewers here in Guyana and online. I'm ALETHEA Grant with the Thursday, May 15, 2025 edition of the HGP Nightly News. This is what you need to know this evening. Members of the Guyana Defense Force came under fire while conducting routine patrols along the Cuyune River near the Venezuelan border. The incidents have raised ongoing concerns about activities in the contested area. Find out more from Tiana Cole.
Serving members of the Guyana Defense Force, GDF, came under fire on Tuesday and Wednesday while conducting patrols in the Cuyune River near the border with Venezuela. In a statement early Thursday, the GDF reported 3 separate attacks within a 24-hour period. Fortunately, no Guyanese soldiers were injured. The attacks were reportedly carried out by armed men in civilian clothing on the Venezuelan side of the border. According to the GDF, its ranks executed a measured response on each occasion when they came under gunfire between Eterimbang and Macapa. The force emphasized its commitment to protecting Guyana's territorial integrity and the safety of its citizens. It stated that regular patrols along the Cuyune River will continue in response to these acts of aggression. The public was assured that all necessary steps are being taken to safeguard the nation's borders and maintain internal peace and security. 3 months ago, GDF soldiers were injured in a similar incident in the Cuyune region after coming under fire from suspected Venezuelan gunmen. Additionally, on March 1, 2025, a Venezuelan military vessel entered Guyana's waters and conducted patrols near all ships, demanding information from their crew. Last Monday, President Irfan Ali reassured citizens that the nation's borders remain secure. This comes as Venezuela defies the International Court of Justice's ICJ ruling and prepares for regional elections in Essequibo, scheduled for May 25, 2025.
To all the citizens of Guyana and those who are living in the territory of Guyana, you have nothing to fear. You're living in what is our sovereign space, and we're going to protect and ensure that our sovereign space is respected by all.
Tensions heightened further on May 2, 2025, when Venezuela officially rejected ICJ's order, issued a day earlier, calling for the suspension of its planned regional elections in Essequibo. The Venezuelan government responded by reaffirming that it does not recognize ICJ's jurisdiction and will not comply with its rulings. Tiana reporting for the HGP Nightly News.
Thank you, Tiana. Travis Chase will now tell us that Chief of Staff of the Guyana Defense Force, Brigadier Omar Khan, is once again assuring Guyanese that Guyana's borders are in safe hands in the face of a planned elections in Guyana's Essequibo by Venezuela. Here is more.
Even though a recent ruling from the United Nations top court ordering Venezuela to refrain from holding elections for officials who supposedly would oversee Guyana's Essequibo, Venezuela seems to be moving ahead with such an election on May 25, 2025. In this regard, Chief of Defense Staff of the Guyana Defense Force, Brigadier Omar Khan, updated the press on this serious issue late Thursday afternoon.
We have been receiving information from the general public along our border communities in Georgetown, across Guyana, of information that we have acted on and will continue to act on. So someone participating in such an election will eventually get to us.
Pressed for an update on this illegal posturing by Venezuela and the fact that armed men in civilian clothing on the Venezuelan shore along the Cuyuni River between Iterengbang and Macapa carried out 3 separate attacks on GDF troops who were conducting patrols.
Every incident that occurs that relates to our border, such as what I just described, the incidents and the details of it are shared with our international partners. RSS is one such partner, regional partner.
Since Venezuela's President Nicolas Maduro has repeatedly underscored its position to not recognize the jurisdiction of the International Court of Justice by asserting that international law does not allow the court to interfere in its planned elections of Guyana's Essequibo, the Chief of Staff had this message for both Guyanese and Venezuelans living along Guyana's borders.
Yes. We got knowledge of it. We arrest you and deport you. Yes. Venezuelans, yes. You can't vote in a country of yours and come to our country and believe everything will be okay. No.
In late 2023, Nicolas Maduro threatened to annex the region by force after holding a referendum asking voters if Essequibo should be turned into a Venezuelan state. Days later, Caribbean leaders joined by Brazil and the UN condemned the move. Guyana filed its memorandum in 2018, asking the United Nations highest court to confirm, in a final and binding judgment, the full legal validity of the October 3, 1899 arbitral award that established the international boundary between Guyana and Venezuela more than a century ago. The ICJ is currently considering the validity of the 1899 arbitral award, and its final ruling is expected to settle the matter once and for all. Travis Chase, HGP Nightly News.
Thank you, Travis. As many oil and gas critics have accused the government of selling out the country's patrimony to U.S. giant ExxonMobil, opposition leader Aubrey Norton is adamant that the state must ensure that the oil company abides by all laws governing the petroleum industry.
However, it's the government's responsibility to ensure that the law is enforced, and if there are to be proper environmental impact assessments, then they should be done.
That was opposition leader Aubrey Norton during a recent press conference. Dr. Vincent Adams, a petroleum engineer, had argued that ring fencing must be implemented as the government prepares to review an application for Hammerhead, the Severn project to be executed by ExxonMobil Ghana Limited. This was Mr. Norton's view on the subject when posed the question of ring fencing.
We have generally said that we believe ring fencing is a useful tool, that we will look at every specific case and ensure there's ring fencing.
According to Dr. Adams, the former APNU AFC coalition government was aggressively working to implement a ring fencing clause for the Sabro block, but when the government took its oath of office in 2020, it deviated from implementing this policy. However, the Ministry of Natural Resources in a statement debunked such claims made by the petroleum engineer, stating that, and I quote, "Every man, woman and child is aware that it was the APNU AFC that signed the Sabro Block Production Sharing Agreement, known as the PSA, in secret and hid the document for a year from public scrutiny." End of quote. When the contract did make the light of day, following unrelenting calls from the PPPC, there was no ring fencing provision in place. It would be recalled that the contract also contains a stabilization clause that prevents Ghana from increasing its fiscal take, unless the oil operator agrees to the same. If there are any arbitrary changes, that very clause emphatically states that ExxonMobil and its partners must be duly compensated for any economic loss it suffers at the hand of any new policy, regulation, or law, the ministry said. However, Dr. Vincent Adams reminded that Vice President JAGDEO during a campaign speech prior to the 2020 elections, the U.S.-trained petroleum engineer reminded this newscast that it was JAGDEO who promised to renegotiate the production sharing agreement.
Let me tell you, After March 3rd, a lot of those contracts will be renegotiated.
That was by JAGDEO, then opposition leader, speaking at a PPPC rally in Mabaruma back in 2020. Adams posited that the government must be truthful with its citizens and to its supporters.
And as soon as they got into office, guess what they do? They reversed their position. They even went beyond that. The entire country at risk in operating above the safe operating limit.
I am Antonio Day reporting for the HGP Nightly News.
Stay tuned, more news after this break. You're watching the HGP Nightly News. Welcome back. Efforts are ongoing to lift the 8-year-old U.S. ban on catfish exports from Guyana. The United States is currently reviewing the latest submissions from local authorities in response to renewed queries. Find out more from Tiana Cole.
The United States Department of Agriculture's USDA Food Security and Inspection Service is currently reviewing Guyana's most recent submissions regarding the 8-year-old ban on catfish exports to the U.S. U.S. Ambassador to Guyana Nicole Theriault told reporters in a recent interview that the government of Guyana submitted additional documentation within the past month in response to a new round of questions from U.S. authorities.
The government of Guyana has most recently, the latest step is that the government of Guyana has responded quite comprehensively to the latest round of questions that we have. Obviously the whole point of the current ban is simply to make sure that everything that comes into the United States is safe for consuming.
She added that once the USDA finishes reviewing Guyana's responses, there will either be additional questions or a decision to lift the ban. The catfish ban has been in place since 2017. Since taking office in 2020, the government has been working with the USDA to reverse it. Under U.S. regulations, Guyana must be able to catch catfish and transport it to a processing plant while still alive. This contradicts the local practice where the fish is caught, disemboweled, and placed on ice until it reaches the shore. Exporters were also required to submit documentation showing that their inspection systems were equivalent to U.S. standards. Failure to meet these standards led to the ban on catfish imports from Guyana and other non-compliant countries. Additionally, Guyana must ensure the presence of inspectors at processing plants, maintain sanitation records, and implement the Hazard Analysis and Critical Control Point HACCP system during packaging. The country must also provide information on how adulterated catfish products are managed. Tiana Cole reporting for the HGP Nightly News.
Thank you, Tiana. The unprofessional and discourteous behavior of a Burbies magistrate has prompted the Burbies Bar to beg the acting Chancellor of the Judiciary for her urgent intervention. Travis Chase reports.
The Burbies Bar, having been inundated with complaints against Magistrate Ravindra Mohabir, has written to Acting Chancellor of the Judiciary, Madam Yonet Cummins Edwards, seeking her intervention into what the bar calls unprofessional and discourteous behavior, already facing accusations of being politically compromised and unfit to serve impartially in the judiciary. The Burbies Bar has told the Chancellor of Magistrate Mohabir's, quote, derogatory statements and comments directed to members who practice in the West Burbies Magisterial District, unquote. In the letter seen by Nightly News, the Burbies Bar writes that the derogatory statements and comments were made in the presence of members of the public and to the serious detriment and embarrassment of members of the bar. Nightly News is aware of an incident in which an attorney was forced to flee the courtroom of Magistrate Mohabir, leaving his clients behind after Mohabir instructed the lawyer to, quote, sit and shut up, and that he doesn't want to hear from him for the rest of the day, unquote. Mohabir even asked his court orderly whether, quote, he was stupid for allowing the attorneys to use their phones in court. No phones whatsoever, I said, unquote. Sources familiar with the usual outbursts of the magistrate have said that his continued unprofessional and discourteous behavior in open court violates the canons of judicial ethics. Most recently, the People's National Congress reform said that several residents of Region 5 are demanding the removal of Magistrate Mohabir for, quote, political bias and for being under the direct control of a PPP minister, unquote. It noted that on Friday, May 2, 2025, at the Weldad Magistrates Court, 2 persons were remanded to prison for 1 month over charges of inciting violence and terrorism. The release from the PNCR stated that the magistrate secretly released Mr. Glenroy Fraser, a known PPP activist, on bail after initially remanding him to prison for abuse and disrupting the peace. APNU said that the actions of Magistrate Ravindra Mohabir clearly indicate that he is compromised and cannot be trusted with presiding fairly and professionally over the affairs of justice. Travis Chase, HGP Nightly News.
Thank you, Travis. More news on the other side of the break. Stay with us. Welcome back. You're watching the HGP Nightly News. High Court Judge Gino Prasad on Thursday threw out an application made by the Guyana Revenue Authority. The Revenue Authority's latest affidavit sought to defend its filings of, quote-unquote, proof of purchase cost for a luxury vehicle imported by businessman Azzuddin Mohammed. GRA in its filing included an invoice totaling $695,000, which was allegedly billed to Azzuddin Mohammed for the cost of the luxury sports car and not the $75,300 declared by the businessman at the time the vehicle entered the country. Justice Prasad, however, ruled against such a submission, but indicated that he would provide a written justification. Further, the High Court granted an application for GRA's written submission to be deemed properly filed, but cautioned that any reference to the, quote, further affidavit in defense, end of quote, must be struck out and expunged from the record. The judge said the court will only consider the remaining portion of the written submission. Judge Gino Prasad will hand down his ruling on the matter on September 12. In response to calls by political analysts such as Dr. Henry Jeffrey and Anand Gulsaran for shared governance to replace the current winner-take-all system, General Secretary of the People's Progressive Party, Barrett Jagdeo, asserts that there are already indications of power sharing. Find out more from Antonio Day.
Explore a system of shared governance at the parliamentary level. We put in place in the Constitution several features that shared power at the level of the legislature.
During a press conference on Thursday, General Secretary of the People's Progressive Party, Civic, Barrett Jagdeo, stated that trust building is crucial for a shared governance, particularly when working at the executive level. According to Mr. Jagdeo, efforts at promoting shared governance included the establishment of multiple commissions, such as the Procurement Commissions and the 5 Rights Commissions.
For you to sit on any of these, you have to have 2/3 support from the National Assembly. No political party has 2/3 of the votes in the National Assembly, so it required collaboration to put together these commissions.
He added that another example of shared governance in action is the need for the opposition and the government to reach a consensus on the substantive appointments to the 2 highest ranking positions in the judiciary, that is the Chief Justice and the Chancellor of the Judiciary.
You show me a country where they have gone to this extent to include the opposition, the judiciary, the 2 top posts in the judiciary have to be appointed substantively only through agreement between the government and opposition.
Leader of the opposition, Aubrey Norton, stated on numerous occasions that he has approved the appointments of the Chief Justice and Chancellor of the Judiciary. However, no one knows what is preventing the President from acting on these appointments. The state to date is also yet to move ahead with the appointment of the local government commission. I'm Antonio Day reporting for the HGP Nightly News.
Stay tuned for regional news.
Good evening and welcome to Wednesday's edition of the Regional News. We begin with news in Trinidad and Tobago. 2 days after losing in court, former Police Commissioner Earl Herwood Christopher and her attorneys are readying to return there after her suspension was lifted by the Police Service Commission, hours after she was sent on leave by new Minister of Homeland Security, Roger Alexander. This effectively ended Herwood Christopher's tenure in office, as yesterday was the last day of her contract. She turned 62 today. Herwood Christopher, who was sent on 66 days vacation, signed the POLSC letter authorizing her return to office at 6:21 p.m. hours after the ministry had indicated its decision. Herwood Christopher's attorney, Pamela Elder Senior Counsel, said she will be taking further legal action in the matter. And I quote, "The next step is court. Can Junior Benjamin act? I would like to see his letter of revocation," Elder said. Elder questioned what legal authority the ministry had to send Herwood Christopher on leave, adding that since her client was lawfully reinstated yesterday, acting Commissioner of Police Junior Benjamin's appointment also automatically ended. The top cop was suspended on January 31 after she was arrested the day before over allegations of misconduct in securing of 2 sniper rifles and other accessories for the Strategic Services Agency. She was subsequently suspended by the POLSC. Herwood Christopher spent 2 nights at the Sinclair police station before being released without charge. Turning attention to news in South America, Bolivia's Constitutional Court on Wednesday upheld a lower ruling banning more than 2 terms as president, in effect blocking former President Evo Morales from running in elections later this year. The unanimous decision from the court came after years of speculation regarding the constitutionality of a 3rd term, with Morales arguing that not allowing him to run again would violate his human rights. Morales has already served 3 terms as president, with a court allowing the final administration because his first came before a constitutional rewrite. He ran for a 4th term in 2019 elections, but fled the country after results were disputed. And finally, some international news. The U.S. Supreme Court is poised on Thursday to consider arguments on Donald Trump's attempt to broadly enforce his executive order to limit birthright citizenship, a move that would affect thousands of babies born each year, as the Republican president seeks a major shift in how the U.S. Constitution has long been understood. The justices are scheduled to hear the administration's emergency request to scale back injunctions issued by federal judges in Maryland, Washington, and Massachusetts, blocking Trump's directive nationwide. The judges found that Trump's order likely violates citizenship language in the U.S. Constitution's 14th Amendment. The arguments were ongoing. Thank you for watching. I am Antonio Day.
GDF troops attacked during patrol near Venezuelan border. Army assures Guyanese that border remains safe amid planned elections for the Essequibo region. Burbies magistrates uncouth outbursts in full court now a norm. Bar writes to the acting chancellor, and JAGDEO seeks to defend the shared governance. Those are our major headlines. For these stories and more, please go to our website. It's www.hgptv.com. I'm ALETHEA Grant. Thanks for watching.